fire department taught me so much in my life. It gave me, it showed me accountability, teamwork, how to show up every day, how to take your craft seriously. And I was just sitting there like, what am I doing? Like, I didn't even know anyone got stabbed. Like, why? We beat them up, bro. Like, you don't have to stab anybody, The path that I'm on right now, just go to jail for free. You don't have to pay me. I'll keep doing what I'm doing the stupid stuff. If I'm not gonna volunteer to go to jail. And the fire department came calling, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted to do that because I was still young. I felt so immature, and I knew it was a no joke job. I was like, I don't know if that's for me quite yet. I told myself so long ago I don't need him. So now he's gone forever. I can't even talk to him on the phone. I'm like, wow, like I miss you so much. That was the first and last time that he cooked for me, and it was the only meal that I ever had with him that he made with my grandmother.
That was like your last supper.
Yeah. That was it. Everything changed after that.
So welcome to the Finding Balance podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Adrian Mesa, here at AMP Mental Health, who's a proud sponsor of this podcast. I'm here with Vincent Michael, who is the founder of Finding Barbara, which is a fitness event. We'll talk about that in a second. He's also a former department, NYPD, not NYPD. See, hold up, I'm fucking up already, bro.
Definitely from Miami.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
FDNY,
the Fire Department of New York.
Yes,
you were in Manhattan, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
So
thank you.
15 years.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So yeah, we've been talking for a while, just online. I met you through my boy Alex. So shout out to Alex real quick.
Yes, sir.
And just been watching you for a while, just via the internet, which is always cool, because then you jump on here and I get to just hear your story, which is pretty dope.
Yeah.
And I know a little bit about it just because when you follow somebody on social media, we give parts of ourselves.
Right.
We give little pieces and little snippets of it. Mm-hmm. And so from an outside perspective, we try to formulate this picture of what this person is, but really with these small percentages, these small puzzles, we don't have the full picture.
No,
right?
You can't really gather the full scope based off what you see on social media.
Yeah,
for
sure. But I'm just curious to hear a little bit about your story. And I guess we could just go back to your childhood, because I know your father has been a big part of just even the clothing and the merch that you put out, and often you post them. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious to start there in your childhood, and then we'll move through, I guess, your time as a firefighter, and then just go from there.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's do it.
Man.
My father definitely does play a big role, but it's interesting because it's kind of almost like backwards.
All right.
Like my father, unfortunately, he was a drug addict. He got caught up in drugs in the 80s. Him and my mother had me at an early age. So my mother took me away from him very early. I was born in the Bronx, and when I was about 3-4 years old, we moved to Brooklyn. And she kind of did it for my own protection because he was kind of drifting further into his drug use and selling drugs and, running numbers. And she didn't want me around that type of stuff. So she took me to Brooklyn, and I would really only see him in my childhood through my grandparents. My grandparents would take me on the weekends to give my mom some relief, and summers, I would spend with them and stuff like that. So that would be how I saw my father. Because my grandfather was the super of the building, and my father had an apartment upstairs. So, he'd come drop laundry off and rub me on my head and like, I'm your dad, right? I'm like, I'm aware, stuff like that. See him on the block. And when I was a little kid, even, we were probably like 10 years old, and I was born in 82. So this is like back end of like the crack era, and we would play cops and robbers, and then cops and robbers turned into, pretending to be like little drug dealers and bothering all the crackheads on the block and stuff. And we used to take Fun Dip and pretend it was like cocaine, and loose leaf paper. We'd roll up little fake joints, and sunflower seeds would be pills, and we just go bother all the guys that were strung out on the block and stuff. And one day, this guy came out of the building, super disheveled, with a dusty fatigue jacket on, denim jeans with the back pocket ripped off, had no underwear on that you could see like his butt, and we walked over to him like, hey man, you want some coke? And he turned around. I was like, get out of here. And he turned around again. He did like a double take, and it was my dad. And he was like, yo man, what are you doing? Get out of here. He's like, what are you messing around with this stuff for? And like took the Fun Dip from me. He's like, stop being, stop doing this type of stuff. This is ridiculous. Da, da, da. And my friend kept kind of like leaning into him, and I was like, leave him alone. It's my dad, man. I was super embarrassed. Super, super embarrassed. And my mom had probably told me when I was like 6 or 8 that he was a drug addict. And I didn't want to believe it because he was also diabetic. So he had to take, his insulin via a needle. So that's what I chalked it up to. And, when I was 10 and I had that experience, like that was like the reality, like he is, he was in bad shape. And unfortunately, when I was like 12, my grandparents left the Bronx and they moved to Long Island. And he got even worse. He had people rob him. They ran up in his house, took his whole stash, gun butt him. He wound up in a coma. And he got kind of screwed over by his partner and left for dead. And all my adolescence, my early days and everything, I'd call him to say happy birthday. And, he'd be like, I'm not even supposed to be here anymore, man. Like, I don't even care about my birthday. I don't belong here anymore. And when I was about 14, he had moved back in with my grandparents. He moved to Long Island to get out of the street. He couldn't even, live in the neighborhood anymore like that, I guess, and on his own. So basically, he didn't mean much to me in those middle years, I guess. When I was about 8, 9 years old, I had a day where like he used to no-show me all the time. He'd tell me he's gonna come see me, he wouldn't show up. My birthday's February 3rd, so my whole life was Super Bowl weekend. Every weekend, rather than come see me, come to my birthday party, plan something with me, bring me a gift, he went skiing and he would go to a Super Bowl party. I would never see him on my birthdays. So all this stuff kind of built up this resentment with me. And finally, one day I was tired of him no-showing me. And I remember standing in front of a mirror and like punching myself in the chest. Like, we don't need him, man. He's not coming. He's not going to be here. So let's accept that. And I don't need him anymore. And that's how I kind of handled myself all through adolescence. And then, we had a small pocket there where we were like friendly, because he was in the house and I was a teenager. I'd pop up every so often. I would smoke blunts with him, He would like play 70s rock music with, and stuff like that. But he was never a father. And then I went into the fire department, and the fire department taught me so much in my life. It gave me, it showed me accountability, teamwork, how to show up every day, how to take your craft seriously, how other people can depend on you, teamwork, just countless things. And I went into it very young. I was like 23 years old. So I also inherited 20 older brothers, minimum, right? You can't love everybody, but I got a handful of guys, and I was younger than everyone, that some guys had tougher love for me than others, and I was a knucklehead. I was a partier, I was a big drinker, and these guys would pull me to the side like, yo, bro, you need to like reel it in, or you need to do this, or I would meet a lieutenant that was like a really cool guy, but also was very serious about what he did, and you want to emulate someone like that. Like, I want to be like that guy. He's 45 years old, he's fit, he's smart, guys take him serious, he could crack a joke, So I learned a lot from certain people. But on the other side of it with my dad, it made me feel like he's such a loser. You're a loser, bro. Like, you don't do anything. You live in your mother's house. You partied your whole life away, did all these drugs. You were never there for me. So in essence, that created even more of a resentment where I kind of distanced myself from him, because I'm a firefighter now. Like, I ain't messing with you, man. You're a bum, So as I've grown and I reflected on it and everything, it's kind of really, he taught me everything I didn't want to be, you know, in a reverse type of way. Like, you know, he made every left-hand turn that I knew I would never do, you know, even like when I was a teenager and I was in the streets, you know, selling drugs, hanging out on street corners in Brooklyn, you know, we used to, you know, we're fighting, beating people up, jumping delivery guys, stupid, you know, stuff that could really get you in a lot of trouble and everything. But when my friends really started to veer off and get really bad, I was like the good one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Out of like, you know, when we would meet other people or girls that hung out with us, you know, I always had it in the back of my head, like the end game. I would always think about my father getting robbed in his apartment and getting set up by a woman and, you know, getting beat with a gun and robbed for everything, you know, almost dying, you know, being in a coma from it. And I was like, I don't want that life, you know. And then I was blessed by a great stepfather, which is a very rare thing, I think. Someone that genuinely cared for me and he wanted to look out for me. And he was a responsible adult. He was successful in business. He didn't play no shit. He wanted to, like, you know, he was a grown man. And I was the type of kid that I didn't have a curfew. There was no limits on what I could do. You know, you're 10 years old and you have to stay on the block. Like, I can roam the neighborhood. No one's gonna come looking for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. And then he stepped in when he married my mother when I was like 14 years old, and he really laid down the law. Like, nah, you got to be home at like 9 o'clock, bro. You're 14 years old. Where are you going after 9 o'clock? You know. And
how was that for you? Did you rebel?
Oh yeah. You know, I got thrown out of 2 high schools. I got arrested like 4 times in high school, all for, you know, smoking weed and stuff like that. But I definitely rebelled because I was like, you're not my dad, bro. You know, and then him and my mother started having marital problems. And, you know, you see them arguing and him talk crazy to my mother. And she's still my mom. So, you know, I'd be like, I don't really care how big you are, bro. Like, you're not going to talk to my mother like that, you know. So we had our rifts in the high school years, and then they left Brooklyn and they moved to New Jersey. And they were like, we're getting out of here, because I was getting in a lot of trouble. And I was hanging out with some older kids from my neighborhood, and, you know, we like beat some kids up, and the older kid like stabbed one of the kids for no reason. And I was just sitting there like, what am I doing? Like, I didn't even know anyone got stabbed. You know, like I had like, it was a fight, and, you know, he was like, you guys did great. You know, I just got to let you know I stabbed one of those kids. And I was like, what? Like, why? We beat them up, bro. Like, you don't have to stab them, anybody, you know? And it was just like a real reality check. Again, like, this is not what I'm meant for, you know? Yeah. I need to step off from this. This is not what I'm about. And, you know, when they left Brooklyn, I had a decent job, and I was like, I'm not going to New Jersey. I'm staying here. So I moved out on my own when I was like 19 years old. And I didn't really have a good relationship with my stepfather at the time when they left. Like, we were pretty much like on non-speaking terms. My father was non-existent. And my stepfather came to me like after like my latest arrest for like smoking pot, you know, stupid situation. And he was just like, what are you going to do with life? And I was like, I don't know. I got a pretty good job right now. He's like, yeah, but this thing has a ceiling. Like, what are you going to do when you're 40? You know, like, you can do this? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't know.
What were you doing at the time?
I was like, doing like building inspections for some guys, but it was on like the management side of things. So I would go collect paint samples, lead paint samples, and, you know, dust samples and stuff like that. I was like 19, 20 years old. I was making like a G a week, you know, so, and I was learning the city even more than I had already learned it. I was going around the 5 boroughs on the train with a little map. There was no GPS on a phone. So I learned
different times. For sure.
I learned a lot from it. It was pretty cool, actually. But he was right. There's a ceiling, right? Like, how long am I going to do this for, you know? So he pushed me.
I'm sorry. What did you learn from it?
What did I learn from it?
Yeah.
I learned the city, definitely. Yeah. I learned the city. I learned different neighborhoods. Again, just learning to be responsible. You know, I'm someone like, I've been working since I was like 14, 15 years old. My mother came in my bedroom one summer and she was like, ripped the covers off, and she was like, you better go get a job. And I was like, what? It's like the first day of summer. Like, leave me alone. And she's like, no. go get a job. And I wound up apprenticing with my grandfather. He was an elevator mechanic. So that was like my very first job. I worked with him for a summer. I got arrested at the end of the summer for, doing graffiti on the train with my knucklehead friends. And that's how I like went into high school. Just so many like always like a little hiccup of something, and but I learned a lot from that. But there was a ceiling. He was right, and he pushed me into going into city jobs. My stepfather, he was like, what are you gonna do? And I didn't necessarily care to be a police officer, but I was always intrigued by firefighting. I had come to know that sanitation was like a respectable job. So I took those city tests. I also took corrections, and I passed on and I declined. And it's like the path that I'm on right now, just go to jail for free. You don't have to pay me. I'll keep doing what I'm doing the stupid stuff. If I'm going to I'm not going to volunteer to go to jail. So I left that one alone, and I was waiting for sanitation, but I did really well on the fire department test. And the fire department came calling, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted to do that because I was still young. I felt so immature, and, I knew it was a no-joke job. I was like, I don't know if that's for me quite yet, because even though I was working 5 days a week doing the building inspections, like it was kind of like a loafers type of job. I was kind of figuring out the manipulations of it, and I could get 3 days of work done in one day.
And then just hang out.
And just hang out for 2 days, stuff like that. So I knew there was no wiggle room in becoming an FDNY firefighter. I've seen the prestige. I was like, oh man, that's a lot, So I declined it the first time they called. I wound up
you declined it the first time?
Yeah. I wound up doing so well that I wound up like at the top of my list. I had residency points. I got 100 on the written and the physical. So it put me in the top of the list, and they called me, and I was just so shocked by it. Like I was like, I'm not really ready. So I declined it because I was still in school. And then they came back 3 months later, because that's how long the academy was at that time. And I had an investigator, and she was just like, you are crazy if you decline this again. She's like, this is like hitting the lottery. This is life-changing. This is a pension, insurance, like, like you need to do this. And I was just like, what about school? I just registered. I just paid for my tuition. And she was like, you'll get it back in your taxes. Drop out.
Straight up.
Like, straight up. And that was January 2005. I went in March 2005. In February 2005, I turned 23. So I went right in. And the girl I was dating at the time didn't want me to do it because she thought I was a creative person, and she thought I was stifling myself and kind of like selling myself out, selling myself short. And I was like, well, what if I do it for 10 years? I don't know. Who the hell knows? Like, who knows what life plans for you, Like, I don't know. And then I went into the academy, and the academy was really no joke. And I was like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not built for this. But you know what? Her mother talked to me. You have to be completely clean shaven, completely shaved head. So you have to do that like every Sunday night. And I was behind on my studies. I think I had so much to write and everything. I was like, I'm just going to resign. I don't think I'm going to do this. And I talked to her mom, and she was just like, I've only known you for a few years, but I've noticed you're not necessarily a quitter. Like I had worked at the Gap. That's where I met this girl, and I stayed there for 2 years until I found another job that was better, and then I left. And then when I had that little pocket job, I found the building inspection job, and then I left. I never was like unemployed basically from, like I said, my early teens or my teenage years. And she was just like, you're not a quitter, so you shouldn't quit yet. You should see this through, go through the academy, and then decide this isn't for me or not. Get to a firehouse first. So I took her advice, and I did that, and it changed my life. Like I said, the fire department really is one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. And it really stems from my stepfather really pushing me and nudging me in that direction. Like, you have to do more than what you're doing right now. He's like, you're going to wind up on the wrong path. You should just try it. Try it.
It sounds like you had just multiple people step into your life, just look out for you, right? Over and over.
My grandfather was a big influence as an elevator mechanic. My stepfather was a great man. Like, I don't know too many people that, they slide in and into that slot and they do what he did for me, especially the headache that I was. I feel like a lot of people would be like, listen, I can't handle this. I'm gonna go off now, And I've been blessed. I've been blessed to be guided by a couple people with strong mindsets of dependability and stability. and they offset my father's instability.
Yeah.
And it's been so interesting how my father, from his lack of presence, has influenced me to now be present. Like to be present for my kids. I have 2 sons. They're 2 little boys. Like I can never imagine not being in their life. Like I'm just gonna go skiing. Like you know what I'm saying. Like I could never do such a thing. And it's from me being that 8, 9-year-old little boy punching myself in the chest. Like I don't need him. And I said that day, like, I'm never going to do this to my kids. I'm never going to do this if I get the opportunity to be a father, I won't be like this. So, he influenced me in a great way of what not to do. And then later in life, we were able to become friends, like in my mid-30s and stuff like that. He'd been clean off of drugs for quite a few years. He had a little job. He was helping pay my grandparents' mortgage, even if it wasn't much. And, my own mistakes as an adult, I started to recognize how easy it is. A few wrong turns, a few wrong decisions can really throw your whole life upside down. I had never done drugs like that, just smoke a little weed and everything. And then like later in my 20s, all of a sudden, like people are offering me cocaine. I'm like, oh, I'll try it. And I'm like, wait a second, like I would never do this because my father did this. And I was so like turned off by, like, I wouldn't even hang out with somebody if they were doing that. Like I would get like really upset. And now here I am, I'm thinking like, well, I can do this because I'm a grown person. I have a job and I can figure this out. And it's like, no, it's not. This isn't what I want to be. And I already agreed to myself. I made the promise to myself, this is not what I want to be because this is what he did. And I'm not going to do that. So that was the end of that little moment, that little chapter. Like, this isn't for me. I'm not going to do that. And I learned so much from his bad decisions. And, he was always a swaggy guy. He always, I used to jack his little outfits, vintage clothes and stuff like that. And he passed away within a couple years of us becoming friends. And it was kind of mind-blowing because it's interesting to find out how much you can miss someone that you never knew you missed in the first place. I told myself so long ago, I don't need him. So now he's gone forever. I can't even talk to him on the phone. And I'm like, wow, like I miss you so much. Like I was brokenhearted. Like I had like almost like a little bit of a mental breakdown when he passed away. Like I was just like, it blew me away, like how much I cared about him. It's because I had suppressed it for so long.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear. I got chills because through your posts, like you just honor your father over and over. You put him on clothes. You show him a lot, and it's like you post a picture of Donnie Brasco or something, and then the next picture is like a picture of your dad, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty dope.
Yeah,
because
that one was for my stepfather. Oh, because I feel like he gave me so much game. Oh, okay. My stepfather too. Like they both gave me game on the streets in very different ways, very different perspectives. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, totally. Like putting him on clothes to honor him. I feel like I was wrong. I was wrong to be selling him so short. Like, oh, he was just a drug addict and this and that. And then to recognize how much he meant to me and to think about his own existence and what it means, Like, just because you're not rich and famous and that doesn't mean that you're not significant. Whether it be to your close ones in your circle. Like my father's side of the family misses him tremendously. He was the life. He was funny. He was swaggy. He's a smart ass. He's a cool guy. Even in his broken down self, his energy is so important, so vital. And I never understood any of that stuff until it was taken away from me. And I really only had a very small pocket where we were really friends because I had to check him. I had to tell him, like, I would call him always just to check in with him, but whenever it was time to have a real conversation about life, he'd be like, all right, I'll let you go now. And I'm like, I thought
we were going to talk.
I was just going to tell you like stuff that's really going on in my life. And you're like, we got past the weather and you're good now.
And he's like, all right, I got to go. I'm out.
So I had to tell him, I said, listen, man, like if this is how this is going to go, I'm going to stop calling you because it's been like this for a real long time. And I think I need a little bit more than this, and it changed. And then I could really talk to him, whether it be about my relationship or partying or, as I was starting Finding Barber and what I was trying to do. He thought it was cool and he was encouraging about it. And then the people that were initially printing my T-shirts wound up being like the town over from where my grandmother and him lived. So it was making me pop in and see them and say hello, because my grandfather passed away first. He passed away in 2013. And then it was just the two of them in the house pretty much. And then even that made me closer to him too, because once my grandfather was gone, I start to see his own maturation, you know what I'm saying? He started to take on more of a role around the house that I guess he felt stifled that he couldn't because my grandfather was there. So I was proud to see him doing those things around the house or helping my grandmother in her older age. And it's kind of trippy, but maybe like the third round of teas that I was making, I was supposed to do a run in Queens, and it was scheduled for rain, and I was indecisive on whether I wanted to do it or not. And I had these tees printed up, and I drove out to Long Island to go pick them up. And when I got them, the print was flat. Like, it was a very colorful it was the Sugar Skull logo for Hero Villain, and it was very flat. And I was very frustrated by it, and it was pouring rain. I was like, now I got to drive back in 2 hours of traffic. And I called my dad, and I was like, hey, what are you guys doing? I was thinking about maybe passing by because, let the traffic die down a little bit. And he was like, I'm actually making dinner for your grandmother and myself. If you want to come by, come on over. We have some extra food. And I was like, you cook? Like, I didn't even know that you made food beyond breakfast. And he was like, yeah, I cook. And I went over, and he had made some pepper steak and rice, and I ate with them. My grandmother died like 10 days later, and then he passed away 3 months later. And that was the first and last time that he cooked for me. And it was the only meal that I ever had with him that he made with my grandmother.
That was like your last supper.
Yeah. That was it. Everything changed after that. Everything. On my family side, everything changed. When my father passed away, I had a very big falling out with my father's side of the family, unfortunately. And they were my protectors, my grandfather, my grandmother, my father. They were my protectors on that side of the fence, And when they were gone, it really threw me for a loop. Like, wow, I have to be a grown up on this side of things. And I don't know. Unfortunately, I just felt like I started to see some family members' true colors. And, when any sort of money comes into a factor and everything, all of a sudden you see people grasping at whatever they can get. And it was a frustrating time. And I decided to go even harder with what I was doing with the Finding Barber and stuff and my production. And I started, really trying to fully craft what I was doing, because I was doing community runs.
So I guess explain a little bit about what Finding Barber is so people understand it.
So Finding Barbara is basically a hybrid workout that I created. I really didn't create it. I just kind of have patented it in a way, because I've had plenty of old timers in the park like, oh, motherfucker's been doing that for like 20 years. And I'm like, yeah, but have you ever seen somebody do it with like 50 people?
Yeah.
Like, not really. And I'm like, well, we'll be through here in a couple days. You'll see. But basically, it's combining running with calisthenics, because on the back end of my firefighting career, unfortunately, I got diagnosed with cancer. I was dealing with back injuries for like 4 years. I had a back fusion. So I was kind of forced into an early retirement. And in that, I was kind of losing myself. I was losing myself because I've always been an athletic person. I've always been someone that was, driven towards fitness, and I was doing personal training on the side, and all of that was kind of getting taken away from me because of these injuries. So when I was leaving the fire department, like, I felt like I was going to lose my mind a little bit, like, where I don't know what I can do. So I forced myself to see if I could get home, and I like did like a little walk run home just to gauge where I was at physically after all of this stuff. And I passed a bunch of parks in New York City. There's so many prominent parks. So I just thought to myself, like, wow, like, what if I had stopped here and I did push-ups, and then I ran to the next park and I did some pull-ups, and then I ran to the next park and I did some dips. I was like, that would be pretty cool. I might try that, So on my own time after my retirement, really, like, for my own sanity, because there was no more heavy lifting and all that type of stuff. Like, that's stuff out, And I mean, I'm not running no 4 or 5 minute miles or anything like that, but I could run, walk at my own pace. And I started off with that and just, like I said, conventional calisthenics. And I met a couple guys in the park by my house, and I asked them if they might be interested in testing that out. And it went from those 4 guys agreeing to it and testing it out with me at the beginning of a summer to by the end of that summer, I did a run that I had like 60 people run with me. And it was like, oh, we might be onto something. And I had a partner. He was like my fitness buddy and everything like that, my main guy. And unfortunately, he had some substance abuse problems. And the following season when I came back, I kind of just noticed him dropping the ball more and more and showing up hungover or looking like disheveled. And I was just like, yo, bro, like I don't think that I can move forward with you doing this stuff because I don't know if I could count on you. And right now you seem really volatile. So I'm going to have to step off, and I guess I have to do it by myself, you know? And then...
Did that remind you at all of your dad and what you experienced with him? Or
Yeah, to a degree. And I've kind of found that it's interesting as you get older, you start to see that. But like a lot of my best friends over the years have all had substance abuse problems, you know, all of them. And myself too. Like I used to drink crazy through my 20s. You know, I started drinking when I was like 13. You know, by the time I was in my 20s, late 20s, you know, where I could stay out till 6 in the morning the next day. I was in New York City. I know all the bars. I know bartenders. I know where we can go to an after hours. Like I could always keep the party going. And when I was like 30, I was just like, all right, this is not it. I want more out of life. I'm drinking myself away. I'm always hungover. I started noticing that it was hurting me at work. Those guys that I said were like big brothers to me were starting to like be concerned. Like, yo, you need to reel it in a little bit. And then that's how I furthered myself into fitness. I was like, either I can go be a bartender, but then I'll probably drink myself even further
yeah, for sure.
into oblivion. Or I could go into fitness, which is another passion that I have. So I got certified. I got NASM certified. And then I started taking all these certifications when I got injured just to pass the time. And I learned a lot about fitness and nutrition and your diet and the importance of it. And then getting further into my 30s, starting feeling those hangovers and recognizing like, this doesn't work with what I'm trying to do. So I scaled back drinking, and I started doing little stretches of sobriety, you know, where it's like a 2-week, 4-week, you know, 8 weeks. And then, let me try to do this for the whole summer, because I started recognizing like, well, I don't want to be hungover in the summer and sweating out Hennessy in the park, dying like I'm going to throw up. Like this doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So thankfully, through my 30s, I recognized myself and I tapered it off. And finding Barbara really kind of like locked it in. Like, what am I doing? Like, this is not it. I don't need that stuff. You know, like fitness is my love. It's my passion. It's a therapy, stress release. And I don't want to be faking the funk. You know, like my partner, he was totally faking everything, you know what I mean? And I saw through it, and it was just like, I don't even want to be affiliated with this.
I mean, that's common with a lot of people, where it's the actions that they take day to day are completely disconnected from the long-term goal that they're telling you that they have.
Right, absolutely. And even too, like after my father died, so I'd been doing Fighting Barbara for maybe like 2 seasons, 2 summers, because, you know, New York is cold, so in the winter you really can't do as much. And then my pops passed away, and I threw myself further into it, but didn't necessarily have a plan. And a buddy of mine, one of the guys from the first run, he asked me if I would like to go to the Cayman Islands to go train like the owners and guests for the holidays at this hotel called Palm Heights. And I was like, yeah, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Please. Like, you know, like I was fighting with my family. I was going through it with my girl at the time. I completely separated myself from my partner, best friend, like even my own brother. Like a lot of people I pushed. If I felt like you weren't giving me the emotional support or the support with the Finding Barbara, what I was trying to do with my endeavors, if I wasn't being supported, I pushed everybody away from me.
How hard was that for you? Because I can tell you that now I just turned 40. And it's now where I'm starting to set those boundaries.
It was extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Like I said, I really felt like I was going to have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
I was lonelier than ever before. I was probably smoking more weed than I had ever before. I I wasn't drinking and partying a lot, but it was still like I felt very damaged, and I felt like I had a lot of my skeletons that I had to face. My father's passing forced it upon me. Like it's either like, sink or swim. I had a choice. Like it was either the pot was going to lead me into substances again and going back into that and pack it in, or I have to really like dive all the way into this fitness and what I'm doing to survive. And that's kind of what I did. And then getting to that hotel was a tremendous blessing. I got to stay there for like 3.5 weeks or something. One of the guests there turned out to be a representative of Nike UK.
Right.
And then she had an athlete flying in to stay at the facility. She was a female boxer training for the Olympics. Her husband was her trainer, and they weren't playing any games. So I got to rub shoulders with them, and I'll never forget it. We had Christmas dinner, and they brought out the dessert. I mean, it's like a 30-person table, for the most prominent guests or whatever that they had at the time, and friends and family type stuff. And they rolled out the dessert, and she wouldn't even have like a spoonful of the creme brulee because she had to train the next day, and she didn't want the sugar intake. And I was like, I'm a joke.
Yeah, you saw the level of discipline.
I was like, that
whoa.
is elite.
Yeah.
That is elite. That is discipline. She put me onto ice baths. They were doing two a day. She would go over to the gym facility in the morning, and they would do pad work or whatever they were doing. And while they were doing that, I'd go over to the bar setup that was there, and I would work on routine stuff and work on my handstand. And then we'd go back and we'd do ice baths, and I would do that with them. And then when you have lunch, she would go take a nap. I'd hang out around the grounds or whatever. And then when they were ready to go back in the afternoon, I'd go back over there with them, and I would do like reps and stuff or strength training, and they would do their agility work and stuff like that. And I just recognized like this is what it is to be elite. And then also too, on top of everything else, going there to train these people at the hotel itself, like they thought that I was an elite runner, which I'm not. I've got metal on my back, unfortunately. Like my pace is my pace.
Yeah.
Like I do what I can, and consistency obviously is the key. But that also too was like a wake up call for me. Like I have to take this more serious because, like you said, like I could post videos of me running, and it could as soon as you cut, all right, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna run again for like 2 months. And I recognize like you can't fake this funk. Like if I really want to be about this, I got to be about it. So I came home very focused and very hungry. And then from that experience, I got put in touch with other people from Nike in New York. I was able to put together a whole presentation for Nike team leaders on what Finding Barber was, what calisthenics was. I got kind of pegged as the face of New York calisthenics, which there were so many other athletes that were much more prominent or maybe further along in the game, if you would. But I was doing more type of like freestyle stuff. So that takes you into like gymnastic routine type work, more explosive stuff and everything. So I guess it's more showy, if you could.
No, it's definitely showy. When you go to Muscle Beach and you see these guys swinging around the bars.
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy.
If you know my friend Starboy, I mean, I think he's one of the best athletes in the world, honestly. And the thing is too, like what I see in freestyle calisthenics is sometimes it could get so redundant that it can make it boring, even as incredible as it can be to see. But when you could put a little sauce on it, when you have swag also, it really brings something to it. And Starboy, I think, is the best at that, me personally. But I felt like that's also what I had that I brought to it. Like I might not be the best, but I was doing moves that kind of like put some flavor on it and everything like that. And so I did a couple interviews, and it really looked like things about to take off. And then COVID hit.
Oof.
COVID hit. Everybody's scared to go outside. Everybody's scared to be around each other. The lady from Nike was talking about possibly getting laid off. Now they had no funding all of a sudden. I was just like, man, back to the drawing board type. And, for me, COVID, I refused to be locked down. And I probably did more traveling than I ever had in my life. And, just getting to different cities, nothing international or anything, but just really running, like to run in New York City, and it's like a ghost town during
Empty.
COVID. It was nuts. And then Kobe Bryant passed away. I found great motivation from that. And coming back from the Cayman Islands, like I said, I wanted to take myself more seriously. And I started running after Kobe Bryant passed. I was looking for motivation, and I saw an interview with like Lamar Odom, and he was like, "I'm going to be in the gym at 3 a.m. putting up jumpers for you." And it clicked in my head, like, that's how great he was. That's how hungry he was for his own personal greatness. He, like, I was a huge Allen Iverson fan also, but I just thought, like, Allen Iverson didn't win a championship. Kobe Bryant won 5 because Kobe Bryant was in the gym at 3, 4 a.m. and Allen Iverson was probably coming home from the club at 3, 4 a.m.
Talking about practice?
Right, exactly. So it made me say another level of, I have to take myself more serious. So every Monday I started running 8.24 miles, and I was calling it Mamba Monday. And I did that I did it all through COVID, from February all the way through the summer. I was running Mamba Mondays, 8.25. And that helped me definitely transform myself more into where I could feel comfortable, as a runner. I still think that there's so many better runners, I'm sure. But I mean, within my own capabilities and everything, I was very at peace with where I was, And then I did a bike tour with probably like 30, 40 people around New York when COVID was over, like the back end of it, August 2020. And then I've always had the thought that I wanted to create something competitive. I wanted to make this a sport because there's nothing like it. We're putting calisthenics with running. You don't see that anywhere. You have track and field. You have traditional calisthenics, weighted calisthenics, freestyle calisthenics. You really don't see running and calisthenics. So, I do these community runs, and what I try to do with the community runs is really make it your own experience along the lines of a Spartan race. Spartan races, you pay for it, and I took them so seriously the first times I did them in like 2012 or something like that. And my friend that was my partner actually made me recognize, how unserious it was. But like we were racing, and you have to like throw a stick into a bale of hay, and it's like a bullseye or whatever. And if you don't get it, you're supposed to do like 30 burpees or something like that. And I was in front of him, and I ran up and I went to throw the stick, and he's like, "I'm gonna beat you." And he threw the stick and it fell on the floor, and I threw my stick and it stuck in, and he took off behind me. I'm like, "Yo, where are you going?
You gotta do your burpees."
I was like, "You gotta do 30 days." He's like, "Man, fuck that shit. I'll pay for this." And he just took off, and I was like, "Man, he's right."
He's right. We're supposed to be having fun.
This is his own experience. Yeah. He's right, So I took that into the concept of finding barber, like I can't do 25 pull-ups in one shot. Not, perhaps, what I'm saying? I'm going to do what I can do in my own capability in this run. Running and doing calisthenics is a challenge in its own right, and not everybody's necessarily as fit to accomplish that. But people want to get outside. So I look at it like it's a great opportunity to network, to meet people, whether it be you can meet. I mean, I've had guys in New York, right? They came to the runs, and perfect example of it. They came to the run, they met each other, 2 younger guys, they became friends. They met one of my guys that I worked with as a trainer, and he's affiliated with an official calisthenics team. So they keep coming back to the runs, and that's the only time they see each other, these 3 guys. But they come to like 3, 4 runs, and then they're like, "Yo, I want to work out with you. You work out with the Spartans, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Come work out with me." So now they're training with him kind of like prospects, and he's teaching them the ways. Then he brings them to the Spartans, and then they get their, they go through their requirements, and they become actual Spartans. And now they all work together in a gym in New York. It's the only calisthenics gym in New York called Limitless, NYC.
That's dope.
And it started because they came to the runs. So, I mean, that's the greatest prime example. But I mean, I've had guys come and they meet a trainer, I feel like when you have a nice mix of diversity, male and female, you can meet someone that's like-minded.
Like One Leg Beast. I follow him now, and I'm like, this dude he's awesome.
Yeah, and Beast is great. Yeah, he's super inspiring.
He's inspiring to me, and again, it was just from coming out to one of your runs.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
That's the way it works.
Totally, and so on that entry level, right? You're meeting people that are like-minded. They want to get outside. They want to exercise. They want to be fit. They're willing to wake up and go outside. And also too, you get to see a city. You're moving. So like going to New York, I was doing routes in the city, different routes in different parts of the city. And then, coming here and creating a few different routes where you can really get the backdrop and really get the feel. Like that finals that we did in December, 2 of those guys had never been to Miami. So they're running around South Beach and they're really getting to take it all in, to run through the streets and really see the different pockets of it and everything like that. So it's a different experience. So yeah, on the entry level, certainly it's a community building tool, networking opportunity. But when you want to take it to another level, I have this competitive side of it that I think, is very, I think it's very elite and it's on its own plane.
Yeah.
Conventional calisthenics is extremely hard. And it blows my mind when someone's like, you guys are just doing push-ups and pull-ups. I could do that too. It's like,
I saw the way that you guys, I saw the way you switched it up when you actually had the event in December. And I don't know if you had done it the same way, I guess in New York or wherever else you had the event. You've done the event in several states, right? Several cities, big cities.
Yes. I've done it in New York primarily. Then we went to Chicago in 2021. This past summer, I went to Philly. We did a Philadelphia one. I collaborated with my guy, J-Rock. And then my wife is from San Francisco. So we went out to San Francisco and we did a San Francisco run.
That's pretty cool.
So from those cities also too, and this all came very organically. It wasn't necessarily my goal for the past year because I did just have my son. My son just turned 2. So last year he was, 1 going on 2. And I was kind of stepping back into the realm a little bit. Like, what do I want to be? What do I want to do with this? And I wasn't sure if it was ready for the competitive side of it. I was thinking about just being a sponsor, being an active sponsor, because during COVID, when all that stuff fell apart with Nike and everything like that, it was like, well, what am I going to do? And I had mentioned that I wanted to make fitness equipment. And the lady from Nike was like, do it yourself. She's like, Nike's never been like known for equipment. Like, do that yourself. Like, do your own R&D and just handle it, So that's what I did, and I have a buddy also that's been in production and in the garment business, fashion business for 20 plus years. So he guided me and he taught me Photoshop and taught me how to, measure and, how to do R&D and what you're looking for and everything like that. And I came out with weighted vests, resistance bands, something comparative to a TRX, a suspension trainer, with the goal being to ultimately build out your own fitness a calisthenics kit. So, with a little duffel bag and you have all your stuff, whether you're going to the park, to the gym. If you're a trainer, you're going to train someone in their house. You're built out in this kit to be efficient in body weight training. So I had all that stuff in place and I was thinking about just being a sponsor. And then I started making the graphic t-shirts and stuff like that. But then I felt like I'm not really seeing my goals through all the way because I knew from day one, like, this can be a sport. I want to do this competitively. And I'm selling myself short being a sponsor. And I sat there one day and I wrote it all up like on sticky pads, and I showed my friend. I was like, what do you think of this? And he was like, looks all right. Yeah. I mean, I would try it. And I was just like, I'm going to see if I could get 8 guys to do it in New York. And that's what I did last April. That was the first real... It wasn't the first competition because I did do a competition we called the Gauntlet in 2021.
Same format?
It was the same format plus more. So that's why we called it the Gauntlet. Like, you had to do like a muscle up competition, then do this style to run, and then come back and do weighted pull-ups and dips, which was nuts.
Real quick, just so I can help like summarize it. So finding Barbara, why Barbara?
The pull-up bar is Barbara.
So, and that's why you call them in New York.
Historically, one of the OGs had kind of coined the term. The bar is Barbara. I guess it kind of started in the park. It's initially a male dominant thing. Like, I'm over here with the bar. Barbara's my girl. I don't need no girlfriend. I don't need no wife. Or cool. The bar never talks back to me. And I was reading these marketing books, and it talks about owning the name in your market is a good component that you want. And I was like, well, the only name really is Barbara.
Yeah.
And for me, I felt like also too, my partner at the time hated it. He's like, you're gonna name it after a female's name. But for me, the thought process was the whole point is this is supposed to be for everyone. Anyone should be able to go into a park and exercise and not be bothered, whether you're a male or a female or an adolescent. You shouldn't get bullied out of the park.
Of course.
So I wanted to use the name Barbara because I felt like I'm softening something that's very
masculine,
hard and tough, and I wanted to be welcoming to all people. Like my wife comes with the kids, and the first run we did here, we had just had the baby. My son was like 3 or 4 months old, and we brought the jogger out, and her and I took turns running with him in the 3-mile run. And I want it to be a family-friendly event. You could come see elite guys do it, and hopefully eventually we could build out a female side of it, but you want it to be family-friendly.
And so then Finding Barbara becomes, it's a 5K?
It's a 5K, about 3-mile run, yep.
Followed by, it's
100 push-ups.
100 push-ups, that's right.
25 pull-ups.
50 dips.
50 dips.
And 25 burpees.
And 25 burpees. So you wind up with 200 total reps and a 5K run about.
So how has it evolved? Was it always this setup, or was there anything different?
It was. So like I said, I kind of treated it when it was the community runs. I treat it like I can give you some recommendations, and then you make it your own experience. Like I had my friend bring his mom, and she ran, and she didn't do any of the reps, but she came to support and came to get her own little fitness in.
And so originally Finding Barbara was like finding the different pull-up bars and parks within the city.
Correct. Because that day that I did that little walk run myself, like I passed these different parks, and I was like, I'm finding the parks. I'm getting familiar and finding the parks.
And
I'm
you're
finding the
Barbara.
bar. I'm finding Barbara.
Dope.
And also too, I was finding a different type of bar because I already knew all the bars to get drunk in New York. So it was like, this is a different bar. This is a better bar. And even still too, like when I talk to certain people, they'll be like, oh, I know the bars over there. And like, oh yeah, there's this place. I'm like, no, I'm talking about a park, bro. And like, oh.
And how do you see this evolving? Because I went to the event. I enjoyed it. I jumped on the bike. I got to pursue the runners.
One of the rep counters.
One of the judges, yeah.
Yeah.
It was really cool. And let me tell you, in terms of what this did to the athletes, they were dead. You don't get through when somebody's pushing you competitively through a 5K, 100 push-ups, 25 pull-ups, 50 dips, 25 burpees, back to back to back to back for time.
For time.
Woo!
There's nothing like it. In my opinion, there's nothing like it.
So what's the future of it?
The future of it, I'm hoping for expansion, building out the athlete pool, building out regionals, basically. So basically, like I said, everything came organically last year. It was supposed to just be a sponsorship. Then I decided to roll out the competition in New York. And the initial mission in that was it was just going to be like, I was going to do a tournament, a 3-event tournament in New York. So April was like a quarterfinal with 8 guys. August was going to be a semifinal with 4 guys. And then the final 2 guys run it in October. And I name a New York champion. So that was the initial plan. And then I got invited to sponsor an event in San Francisco. San Francisco, a guy, Matt, runs Calisthenics Battle League. And my wife is from out there. So I happened to be going out there in the same time that he was having his event. He showed love. He said, you're more than welcome to come out, set up your table and be one of the sponsors if you're interested. So I did that. And when I did that, I got to meet more of the athletes and people that are in the scene in the Bay. And I told my wife, if we're going to come back here in September, like we could probably run an event out here. So I was initially just thinking of doing a community run and not having the competitive side of it. But then from being seen in San Francisco, the Philly event happened organically. My homie Jay Rock asked me to help him, curate and pull together his event. We had a 2-on-2 battle of a conventional calisthenics athletes, 4 prominent guys that really are very serious about their craft. And then I just put a community run on that one. And we had 20, 25 people come out, do a 2-mile run with me. Then we had that conventional battle, and then we had some kids compete. And from that led to Chicago. Chicago. So my homie Ian reached out to me that I had done the run with in 2021. He was like, Chicago needs a comp out here. Like me and a guy named Jason, Chi-Town Ninja.
Yeah.
He's like, we're down to race. If you want it to be a race, we want to do a conventional, but we'll race. And I was like, if you guys will race, I'll come out there and we could do a group community run with it. We'll just put them together. So that was my second time going out there and doing that. And I got like 40 people to come out on a run with me. These two guys raced each other and it was a really good comp. And I was like, man, I have to do San Francisco now. I have to. And then it was like, well, if I'm going to do San Francisco, I have to do something in Miami. I live in Miami. Like, how am I not doing anything in Miami?
Home,
So, like I said, it's just like a little snowball. And then I only had the two guys race each other in Chicago, but we had like that 40-person turnout for the community portion of it. And then San Francisco, I kind of tried to use the same template. And rather than getting the community run, I actually got more athletes. I got 6 guys that wanted to compete. So we ran those 6 guys and then came out, named that guy the West Coast regional champion. And they came here and then Alex, I met Alex as a bartender. I had braids at the time. He had some braids in. And I was like, do you know anybody that can braid hair in Miami? He's like, honestly, I don't. He's like, if you really look at these, they're not that great. And it's hard to find somebody to braid your hair. But we became friends, and then I actually started training Alex. Like when I would come visit, we would do a few sessions together in the park, and that was how we became friends. And I actually told him then, that was like 2019, I was like, I want to build this out into a sport, and I want to build this out into a community. And he was like, yeah, he's like, you got to do it, but there's no community here. And I was like, well, it starts with you then. Like you're in the park here with me right now. All it takes is for you to find one other person, you. And then from there, turn it into 4 people, you know what I'm saying? And just go from there. And, Alex went on to get into fitness and he got certified and everything. And I think his story is super dope. Yeah. It's a great story. And from that, when I was circling around to find athletes, Starboy was willing to step out of his comfort zone, and he had started dabbling in running because of me and started running with me and stuff like that, and he wanted to take it serious. And I asked Alex if he would be interested, and they raced each other. And I said, whoever wins is going to be the Southeast regional champion, and then I'm going to try to pull together all 4 of these regions.
I want to put this on there because I would bust Alex's balls. I would show him clips of Starboy and be like, I don't know, Alex. I think Vinny's setting you up to lose, bro. And Alex, I could tell I was getting in his head. Alex would be like, I got him on the run, bro. I got him on the run. And then when the race was done, he was like, I told you I had him on the run.
I'll tell you what, that was a really good race. It was
an awesome race from both of them.
It was a really good race.
They both, let me tell you, they both put...
They gave it their all. You can see it in the photos.
Yeah.
You can see it in the pictures. The pictures say it all. The pain.
The cool part was afterwards, I think Starboy stepped up because I've been seeing him running a lot lately. Yes. So I'm like, Alex, he's coming back for you. Don't sleep.
He told me he's still running the Fine and Barbers every Sunday.
That's dope, man. That's cool.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. I mean, I think that some people might get it misconstrued. Like if you're not influencing, I don't even like using the word influencing, inspiring. If you're not inspiring like thousands of people, like, don't waste your time or anything like that. It's like, if I could, put a few guys onto what's helped me keep myself sane, or how to take yourself seriously, or like I said, this stuff has trickling effects, like to obsess over a run, to obsess over a handstand and take yourself seriously with that. Like you can do that with your relationships, you can do that with your, your morals, your values, your finances, your education, Sure. You have to start somewhere. And so to see that spread out into people that I care about, like Starboy's my homie, It's not like, oh, I saw this guy on Instagram and I asked him to run, and you know what I mean? Like that's my dog, Like I love to see him do well. Alex is my homie. I love to see him win. You know what I mean? So stuff like that makes me super happy. And then, you get new relationships, like the guy Jason from Chicago. Yeah. I didn't even know him before he ran in August, and I talked to him frequently.
Me too. I DM him all the time now.
And he's a very big supporter, and he believes in what I'm trying to do, and I appreciate him. And, just the way that you find the people to replace the people that you clear out. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Like I had to clear out that family, and it hurt me. It pained me so much, and it still can at times, but it's not the same wound. But I also have replaced that family with people that I know care about me, or that I know I've already instilled like my boundaries within myself, like where I'm going to go with these individuals. You know what I'm saying? And I felt like, you know, I don't really need anybody that's going to be a habitual line stepper with me, you know, like that's not what I need. I need someone that's going to inspire me and move me to be better. And I like people that are, you know, of morals and values and high character. So I think also too, I have found that in finding Barbara, in calisthenics, in this fitness journey. I've found very special people that I hold dear to me, because I guess perhaps I don't have such a traditional family setting.
Yeah, at this point you're creating your own family.
Yeah. You know, we talked about too with like writing and stuff like that, and I wrote something like that, like I'll create my own family. You know, like I'm not even worried about it. You know, it could only last for so long.
Hey, you haven't been writing. I mentioned to you via DM. I was like, yeah, because of you, I started putting out like lyrics or poems or just raps.
Yes.
And you were doing a lot. Why have you stopped?
I just stopped sharing. I actually wrote something. I said something like, you think I stopped rapping? I just stopped sharing. I just stopped caring. But yeah, I'm still working. I'm still writing and practicing, and
But it's cool because I didn't really know you, but then I would see you would put it out, and then you have swag that I don't in terms of the way that you could articulate it and the way that you could rap your voice. You have the New York accent.
Right.
So I just write it, but I don't really try to perform it. And I remember you would put it out and I'm like, oh, okay, this shit is hard. Some of it hit really hard.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And this was a while. This is like 3 years ago, I think.
I started after my dad died.
All right.
I started after my dad died because I had done it earlier in my teens and stuff like that, but same thing. I'd write a couple things down. I'd just leave it alone. And when I was like in college, I started doing it again. And again, you know, hindsight's 2020, and I recognized like, well, every time that I was really doing it was a time of trauma, you know, because also too, while my father was addicted to drugs, my mother was bipolar. So my mother had a lot of personal issues that she was dealing with when I was in high school. So, you know, with those things that went on with her, it's trickled down trauma to me. You know, she's absent, whether she's in the house or not, you know, and we had a lot of stuff going on. But the writing really, it was always like a coping mechanism for me. And even if I wasn't that good at it or whatever. And then I had that girl that I was dating, she bought me a little rhyme book, I remember. And I used to stuff I would write them on anything, a napkin, this, that, and I would stuff them in the notebook. And I still have it. I found it when my stepfather threw all my stuff out of his basement. He's like, you got to get all this high school shit out of here. So he made me go through, and I found the book, and I was like, wow. And then I had a period in the fire department that I was dealing with some trauma with my mother, also family stuff. And I had bought a new notebook, and I was writing it, and guys in the firehouse found it. And I walked into the kitchen, they were reading my rhymes, like laughing hysterical. And I was like mortified, like, oh my God.
But some motherfuckers are like that, right?
Yeah, haters, bro.
Yeah, haters.
Haters gonna hate.
Yeah, haters gonna hate.
So I kind of stopped again. But when my father passed away, I just said to myself, I am going to do whatever I want, whatever I think I should do. I just want it to flow organically. I want to be anything and everything that I think I can be, to the fullest of my own capabilities. You know, I don't have to be Biggie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have to be as commercially successful as Jay-Z. It's not about that for me. It's really therapeutic. It's a release. It's a creative tool. And I enjoy it, to get lost in writing. And then I had a friend tell me, you know, it's like, do you write any of this to beats? And I was like, no, I never really have. And then I started doing that. And then same thing, like I never performed it or read it out loud or whatever, you know. And then I started doing that, and like for me that was like cringy, you know, like oof, I watch myself, I record myself and then watch it and I'm like, oh man, I suck.
And here I am on the other side, like, damn, this shit is cool, man. Yeah.
You know, oh man, this is terrible. But then I started practicing and trying to take it a little bit more serious, and practicing, and started sharing it on Instagram, and I enjoyed it, but I kind of step back from social media a little bit for myself. I find that sometimes it's also I'm in a different place. You know, I have 2 kids now. So I pulled back a little bit from all the sharing, and I found that it was a little distracting, and I've been focusing on finding Barbara as opposed to myself personally. But what I want to do is kind of like, just kind of like same thing with like drinking or anything else. Like I want to be able to have discipline with it. I don't want to be on the search window of Instagram for 3 hours, or you know, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm looking at vintage wrestling and and stupid memes.
The Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, man. So I was just like, so that's why I kind of took it. I took a step back from it, but I would rather be more tactful with, you know. All right, it's New Year's. Let me post some pictures of the baby, put some stuff that I have for the last month or whatever like that, and share. And you know, I have been writing for the last year and practicing, and you know, I don't quite know how to record the right way, so that's also another thing. Like I figured out for a little pocket there how to record and put stuff on SoundCloud, and then they did like some updates on the phone or whatever like that. It doesn't work anymore.
I've never even looked at SoundCloud, so I have no idea.
Yeah. So
let me ask you, I'm gonna jump real quick because you just like loosely said, oh yeah, I had cancer. Well, while you were a firefighter, no?
Yeah, and I found out by chance. I hurt my back at a fire, and then they sent me for PT. And while I was in PT, I kind of injured my neck, and I noticed like I couldn't sleep. Like, you know, to turn my head, I'd be like, what? You know, so it was like I really need another MRI on my neck, and the fire department said no because they had just given me the MRI on my back. And I spoke to my mother. I remember they was like, you have insurance. Why don't you just go through your insurance? That's through the city, right? And I was like, yeah. And I went through my own insurance, and the guy came back and he's like, you do have issues with your neck. You might have some herniations and everything. He's like, but my big question is you have a bunch of growths all over your thyroid gland. And I obtained an old MRI from you that they were there then. Why haven't you gotten it taken care of? And I was like, no one told me. I didn't know. I hurt my neck initially at a fire, like in a basement. It was like one of those low basements, and you know, your bunker boots and your helmet, you know, it makes you like almost like another foot taller. Yeah. So I went to duck my head, and I didn't duck low enough, and I jammed my neck, and I got an MRI, and I guess the growths were there at that time, and no one had told me. And then it was now like 4 years later, and the guy's like, you got to get that looked at. And I was like, okay. And I was, I don't know, maybe like 33, 34. I was pretty good shape. Like I really didn't take it serious. So I was like, yeah, okay, sure. But I went through the process, and, you know, they did the ultrasound, and they came back. They didn't like the size of them. And then they came back and were like, you know, you got to do a biopsy. And then I did the biopsy. And really just like in passing, I was going to blow off my doctor's appointment. And the guy I was driving around with that day at work, I was like, oh man, I think I have a doctor's appointment today. He's like, just go. I'll take care of stuff and I'll come pick you back up. And I went upstairs to just grab my paperwork and leave because I was trying to go back to my firehouse. And they were like, oh, you have to wait. The doctor actually wants to talk to you. And he brought me in the back, and he was like, you know, you got the best cancer you could ever get, but you actually do have cancer. And I was like what? Like just really like definitely turned me upside down a bit. And also too, I would say that experience and my father's passing, those two experiences made me really have such a grander appreciation for life, you know, because when I was younger, I don't think that I really cared, probably because of my parents. You know, my father was a drug addict telling me every year, like, I'm not supposed to be here. My mother was bipolar, like, you know, suicidal. So for me, I don't know that I necessarily had a care. I really just lived by the seat of my pants, and, you know, whatever was whatever, basically, you know. And then I had cancer, and I was like, wait a second, I'm wasting a lot of time partying and getting drunk and being stupid, and I'm taking the fire department for granted, and I'm taking my whole existence for granted, perhaps, you know. So I started taking myself more seriously in certain aspects, started reading more, started drinking less, started, you know, reinventing my fitness because I was injured, you know, like doing these annoying corrective exercises, but recognizing how important they were. And then my father passing was just another level of it, going to the Cayman Islands and seeing what elite really looks like, what real discipline looks like, realizing what loss really feels like. Because, you know, to have a parent walking the earth and you just don't mess with them, and then they leave the earth, is very different things. So yeah, those experiences were definitely life changing for me. And with the cancer, I had to have the gland removed. And then after that, when I did my follow-up, it kind of threw me for a little loop. They were like, you still have cancer. It's in your lymph nodes. And I was like, you told me that you were going to get everything was fine. And like, you just have to do like the lowest level of chemo. And I was like, wow. So they gave me like a radioactive pill. So it's like a one-time thing instead of having to go in for the sessions and everything like that. And I was basically like a bubble boy.
You had to stay away from everything. Yeah,
complete isolation.
Because your immune system is basically knocked out.
I had to be in complete isolation for like almost 2 weeks and lock myself in a room. If I was going to leave my room, I had to put gloves on. If I was going to go to the bathroom, I had to put like saran wrap around the seat and stuff. But so far, so good. Been in remission. And I changed my diet up for a good amount of time. You know, eating very clean.
So it was a one-time treatment, and
yeah, and then I just have to go get periodic checkups. Like
How
right now, I
often
have like a little lump on my Adam's apple. Like I just got it checked out. They said it's not cancerous. I don't have to worry about it. Like they wanted to remove it, but I don't want to have another surgery, another recovery. And if it's not cancerous, like just I don't want anything to go wrong. You know, my father actually ultimately passed away. He had a routine surgery, got an infection, and he died 2 days later. So for me, it was like, if I don't have to go under anesthesia and do all of that, I'd rather not, you know? So.
Where do you think you draw all your strength from? I mean, even as an adolescent, looking at yourself in the mirror, pounding yourself on the chest, saying, we don't need him, to, you know, just overcoming cancer, to all these different obstacles you've dealt with, the passing of your father. Where do you draw your strength from?
I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, my stepfather used to always tell me I had a chip on my shoulder. He's like, you walk around with this chip on your shoulder, man. He's like, it's okay. And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. I'm going to make sure that I'm okay. You know, I don't know. I just, the chip, I find I've always drawn power out of the pain. You know, like, you know, I'm from a different era. My mother's Puerto Rican. You know, she used to whip my ass when I was bad. Yeah. And I was really bad. So, you know, she got to go get the belt and handle me. Then that's what it's going to be. And, you know, I used to lock myself in the bathroom, you know, in my early adolescence. And I would exercise. I would exercise in the bathroom before I took a bath or a shower. I would exercise in the shower. I was small enough. I would lay on the floor and do leg flutter kicks. And, you know, fitness has just always been a guide to me. And I just always, I've always just prided myself on taking care of myself. And I've always had people telling me, like, I'm not going to be nothing, you know, type of shit. And even like when I made it to the fire department, I had one of the only other Puerto Rican guys in the firehouse come over to me the first night out, the first boys' night out. He was drunk and came over on some hood shit and put his foot on my sneaker. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, you're here for all the wrong reasons, and I'm going to prove it. And I was like, I've been here for a week. What do you know about me, bro? And he was just like, I'm going to prove it. You'll see. And I was like, man, fuck you. And for me, it was like, you know what? I'm going to prove to you that I could be a good firefighter. I'm going to prove to all those older guys over there that sent you over here to do that they're going to want to work with me because I'm athletic enough to help them and take care of them if anything goes sideways. And I'm gonna prove you all wrong. I'm gonna take this serious. And like I said, those, you know, that lieutenant that had some swag and everything, and I was just like, I want to be like that guy. And you know, he came to me and be like, you know, the hose bed on the engine looks like shit. And I'm like, I don't know. So, and he was like, your hose bed is the pride of the company. When you drive around the city, if your hose bed looks like shit, then the other engines in the city are gonna be like, those guys don't care. And from that, I was just like, oh, well, I had no idea that that's what that meant. From that day on, if I worked hungover or not, if it didn't look up to par for me, I would strip the whole bed and I would do it by myself. And guys would be like, oh, this fucking guy, you know? I'm like, you don't have to help me. I'll just do it, you know, because I'm not going to let anybody think that I don't take this serious. You know, I can have a sense of humor and be a wise ass, but, you know, if we're really getting to it, let's get to it and let's take it serious. And yeah, I enjoy proving people wrong about me. You know, I had a guy in my firehouse tell me he grew up with both his parents. He grew up with his siblings. They lived in the same house their whole lives and everything. And one day he told me, he's like, you can't have anything like that. And I was like, what do you know about me? He said, you come from a broken home and from the hood. Like, you ain't, what makes you think that you're going to be able to have something like that or whatever? Because I used to make fun of him, say like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't grow up like the Brady Bunch, you know? So finally he snapped on me one day and was like, what do you know about it? You know, you come from a broken home, bro. You're never going to have anything like that. And I was just like, ooh, like that really hurt my feelings. But for me, it was just like another, no problem. And you know what? I got 2 beautiful boys and a wife, and life's not perfect, but I love it, you know? And I feel like just in that, you know, people think, I used to have my own family tell me, you know, like, because my father and my mother, who they were, like, we can't believe you got into the fire department. We thought you were going to be a criminal. And I'm like, oh, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for thinking so much of me.
You guys are the sweetest. You know what I'm saying? Tell me more, you know? So the doubt definitely can be a driving factor for me because I believe that anything's possible if you can take yourself serious enough. You know, if you can put your best foot forward and you're willing to learn, you know, you can go anywhere with that type of attitude, you know. And yeah, I don't know. When I was younger, I think I was just so tired of him, you know, not showing up, leaving me hanging. You know, I didn't understand it, and I was just so frustrated by it. I was just so tired of it that I was just like, dude, we don't need him. What's he gonna do? You know, bring nothing to the table.
But what's crazy is that you have to, and this goes for any kid, right? You're going to tell yourself, you have to draw strength. You have to build resilience. Yeah. But in the end, you can say, we don't need them, but ultimately we do, right?
We should need them. We want them. We want them. You know, they're a vital piece in life, you know, and, you know, they could be a hindrance or you know, or a positive. And, you know, fortunately for me, I was able to turn him, the hindrance that he was, into a positive. Yeah. And then from that, I was able to circle back and forgive him, as a grown-up, because I would recognize, like, it's so easy to say yes to everybody offering you a bag of blow or, you know, that shot or a free trip when you know you have no business going, and, you know, all these type of different things that are irresponsible and lack discipline. You know, I learned all of that from his poor decisions, you know, and also too, as I got older, my resentment towards him diluted, and I wanted to make him proud. I wanted him to be proud that I was his son. That, like, look, you might not have gotten it right, but I'm gonna help fix it. I'm gonna move the needle a little bit, you know. And his father didn't really bring much to the table either. His father was like robbing banks. My grandfather, him and my oldest aunt are 10 years apart because he robbed a bank and did a 10-year bid. Came back, got my grandmother pregnant, and then he died. So it's like, you know, you look at a bank thief, a drug dealer, drug addict, and then I'm a firefighter, you know, trying to move the needle a little bit. And now being present for my boys, I hope that can instill in them the next moving of the needle. You know, I take my son on my runs with me. I take him to the park. I take him to the gym with me, you know, and I don't remember when I was 2 years old. I'm sure he might not remember this stuff, but it's going to be in him. Yeah. You know, so.
Well, Vinny, I don't think you've just moved the needle. I think you flipped the script. So.
We'll see. We'll hope. I hope so.
No, you're doing the work. I think you have to acknowledge that. I know you still want to have that chip. Like, I still got to prove people wrong, but you got to also acknowledge.
There's always going to be a naysayer.
Yeah, no, but
good.
You got to acknowledge the fact that, I mean, from where you come from and what people expected of you, you've completely flipped the script. Yeah. So, is there anything else you want to put out there?
Anything else I want to put out there?
Any message you want to send to anybody?
You know, just keep the lookout for the Fine and Barber runs, I guess. I'm going to try to do the best that I can to continue them, continue to build out the sport. The community runs, like I said, I think they're a great networking tool for like-minded individuals to get outside. And, yeah, just keep building. Keep on building. Keep chipping away. I'm going to keep writing. And be creative.
Awesome, man. Yeah, keep up with those outlets more than anything.
Amen. You know, so they're all stress releases. Each one of them, fitness, writing, all of it. I call the running active meditation. I don't know how to sit still necessarily. So when I get out for those runs and I can run with no music, sometimes your headphones are dead for a reason, you know, and go out for a run and really just clear my mind of all the stressors I have going on. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you. You could find Vinny at Finding Barbara on Instagram because I think he ghosted his personal account. So
the Finding Barbara Instagram is finding_Barbara, and then my personal is Vincent_Michael without the vowels in it.
Gotcha.
So VNCNT_MCHL. And I'll probably put it back on, you know, around my birthday. My birthday's in like 2 weeks. I'll reactivate.
How old are you going to be, Vinny?
It'll be 42.
42. Happy birthday, man.
Thank
Happy
you, bro.
Thanks for joining me here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hey, that's all we got, guys. Take it easy.
Amen. Peace. Thank you.